So, where we left off, does anybody remember where we left off last week with David? Saul had cornered him in the mountains, right? So first off, what did David do? There was a town in trouble, and David took his ragtag band of misfits, his people who were, they're kind of the dregs of society. They wasn't like the real popular people or the rich people. They were kind of poor, right? But he took them and he saved an entire town. Well, this town turns around and is going to give him up to Saul. God tells him, this town's going to give you up. So he flees that town. They don't actually give him up because God lets him know, hey, they're going to turn their back on you. I know you just saved them. I know you just helped them out, but they are going to turn their back on you. So David flees. And then, anyways, during this whole time, Saul corners David in the mountains. Well, God spares David's life by allowing the Philistines to attack another camp, and Saul has to leave. He has to save face. He can't sit there and say, well, I'm just chasing after David for no reason. I'm not going to go save people, right? So he has to save face and he has to flee. And God knows this, and this is how God spares David's life, because the Lord is on David's side. We see this over and over and over again. So now we are, at the end of that, David flees into strongholds, it says, in Engedi. En-Gedi. And En-Gedi is this town somewhere else, okay? Doesn't necessarily matter where it's at, but that's where we're at. David is hid in this place called En-Gedi. And look at 1 Samuel chapter 24. We'll get back to their story. And it came to pass, when Saul was returned from following the Philistines, that it was told him, saying, behold, David is in the wilderness of En-Gedi. Then Saul took 3,000 chosen men out of all Israel, and went to seek David and his men upon the rocks of the wild goats. So, look at that. David, now how many men does David have? Do you remember how many men David has at this time? Does anybody know that answer from last week? He has about 600 men, right? He started out with 400. Now he has 600. But how many does Saul chase after him with? Look what it just said. He gets 3,000 men to chase after David, right? So this is where we're at. Verse 3, and he came to the sheepcotes by the way, where was a cave. And Saul went in to cover his feet, and David and his men remained in the sides of the cave. Who knows what that means, to cover his feet? Does anybody know what that's talking about? When he went into the cave to cover his feet? Okay. So to explain this, I want to point out another interesting story in the Bible. Let's look at Judges chapter 3 real quick. I want to show you the story of Eglon, the king of Moab. And I want to explain to you what it means to cover your feet in the Bible. It's actually something a little bit comical once you figure out what it's talking about. Judges chapter 3, verse 14. I want to show you this small story about Eglon, the king of Moab. I'll give you a chance to get there. It does us good sometimes to flip in our Bibles a little bit and learn where these things are and see these things for ourselves. This doesn't even have a spiritual application. It's just interesting. It's interesting to know what it's talking about. And I'm going to point out a few things in this too that people get wrong. But Judges chapter 3, verse 14, I'm going to start reading. So the children of Israel served Eglon, the king of Moab, 18 years. So this is during the time of the Judges, right? The children of Israel are going in and out of captivity during the times of the Judges. There's times where the children of Israel are doing good and doing right in the eyes of the Lord. So they are not in captivity and they're being blessed and they're prospering. But then there's times when they start to serve other gods and they start to do what is wrong. So God allows a enemy, if you will, to come and capture them and take over them and rule over them. And this is the second time that they get captured during this time. And it's from Moab, and it's the king it's Moab that captures them, the children of Ammon and the children of Amalek, and the king is called Eglon. Okay, so let's read about this real quick. Verse 15. But when the children of Israel cried unto the Lord raised them up a deliverer, Ehud the son of Gera, a Benjamite, a man left-handed. So they repent, they're sorry for what they've been doing, so God says, fine, I'll raise you up a deliverer, I'll raise you up a judge that will free you from this oppression, and his name is Ehud. And the reason it says he is left-handed, I believe, and we're going to see this in the story in just a minute, is because when he goes in to see this king, he tricks the king. We're going to see he's going to bring a gift to the king. The whole reason of him bringing a gift to the king is so he can kill him. But he's left-handed. most people are right-handed. So I think what it's trying to tell us there, and I think we'll see this in the story in a minute, is that when he comes into the king's chambers, they're probably checking his left side for a sword or a dagger, right? And they're kind of feeling him and seeing he has no weapons on him, because most people are right-handed. They're going to reach toward their left side, pull out a dagger, and stab somebody. Well, in this instance, this guy is left-handed. So I think he gets away with it because they just check his right side for a sword, and they don't check his left because they're not expecting to see a left-handed guy show up. I don't know if that's entirely true of why this is pointed out, but I believe that's the reason it is pointed out, is because it's showing you this is how he got away with it, because he was a left-handed guy. So let's continue. And by him the children of Israel sent a present to Eglon, the king of Moab. So this guy Ehud sends a present to the king of Moab, and this is how he gets an audience with him. But Ehud made him a dagger which had 2 edges of a cubit length. How long is a cubit? Do you remember that? Yeah, from the tip of your fingers to the tip of your elbow. He made a dagger that long, right? And he puts it on the right side of his leg, because he's left-handed. He's going to reach to the right side. He's going to pull it out, okay? He made him a dagger which had 2 edges, a cubit in length, and did gird it under his raiment upon his right thigh. Now look at that. Under his raiment upon his right thigh. That's going to be important in a minute too. And he brought the present of Eglon, king of Moab. And Eglon was a very fat man. This guy is a big old fat king. He's huge. And you're going to see this in a minute too, how fat he is. And when he made an end to offer the present, he sent away the people that bear the present. So he has all these people come in, must have brought this big gift to Eglon, right? So he sends them all away, so he's alone. But Eglon still has a few people that are his advisors around him. So then he says this. He's trying to get Eglon alone. But he himself turned again from the quarries that were by Gilgal and said, I have a secret errand unto thee, O king, who said, keep silence. And all that stood by him went out from him. Basically he says, I have a secret for you, and nobody can hear the secret. So the king trusts him and sends everybody away. And Ehud put forth his left hand and took the dagger from his right thigh and thrust it into his belly. Now look how far remember, we're talking a cubit, right? Look what it says. And the haft also went in after the blade. So the blade, the handle and the blade is this long, right? Well, you have a handle and then you have a haft, which is the part that separates the blade from the handle. That keeps you, when you're stabbing somebody, from your hand sliding into the sharp part, right? That's what keeps your hand there. Everybody know what I'm talking about? Like the flat part between the blade and the handle? He shoves it in so hard that part goes in too, into Eglon's belly. And here's the thing, Eglon must be really, really fat for the whole blade. His belly just swallows the entire thing. It's like almost this long, right? The haft also went in after the blade. The fat closed upon the blade so that he could not draw the dagger out of his belly, and the dirt came out. So what do you think it means by the dirt came out? Well, think about what kind of resembles dirt, though. Have you ever skinned a deer?
Yeah.
So what do you not do? You don't want to puncture the stomach or the small intestines, and the large intestines, it ain't that big of a deal. They don't really stink that bad, but you really don't want to puncture them either. The dirt is the feces, the poop, right? This is what's saying, that he stabbed him. He got the blade stuck in his belly, and literal feces starts coming out of his belly, right? And the reason this is pointed out, you'll see. So feces is coming out of his belly, right? The blade is stuck. Ehud went forth through the porch and shut the doors of the parlor upon him and locked them. So Ehud locks. So what the thing is Eglon is in this place that's like his summer quarters, his summer chambers, maybe this small little place, right? And so Ehud tricks him, he stabs him, he can't get the dagger out. Literally, poop is coming out of his belly from where he stabbed him and just ripped his belly apart. So he locks the door to the chamber that he's in. Like, say we're in this room with Eglon and I just stabbed him. I go lock the front doors and I climb over the porch and head out the back. So, look at this. When he was gone out, in verse 24, his servants came, and when they saw that, behold, the doors of the parlor were locked, they said, surely he covereth his feet in his summer chamber. So here's what's going on. They go to his summer chamber, they see that the doors are locked, and they know that Eglon is inside. But what do they smell? They smell poop, right? So here's what they're thinking. They're thinking that he is in there with the doors locked, and he's what the Bible calls covering your feet, right? He's relieving himself. He's taking a dump. I don't know what other way to put it, right? He's covering his feet. They smell this smell. They see the doors locked. So that's why they don't go in. They're like, oh, he's in there. He's doing something. We're not going to go in there and disturb him during this time. And they tarried till they were ashamed. And behold, he opened not the doors of the parlor. Therefore took they a key and opened them. And behold, their Lord was fallen down dead on the earth. And he had escaped while they tarried, and passed beyond the quarries, and escaped unto Syria. So he had escaped. But the point I want to point out is this. That is an interesting story, and there's really no spiritual significance in this point. But what I want to say is this. Some people, they start to say, like, have you ever heard a preacher say, well, Jewish custom says that, Jewish Middle Eastern men just didn't run, or they say all these things like Jewish this and Jewish that. They don't know what they're talking about. If it's not in the Bible, I don't believe it. So here's what people try to say. They try to say, and this is going to become important in the story in Saul and David here in a minute too. So they try to say this, what covering your feet is, and they say the same thing, but they try to say that men wore robes and skirts all the time, right? And they say that, so a man had a skirt on, and they say covering your feet is literally, now, I know this is kind of crazy and weird, but just bear with me. It's squatting down, and the robe covering and giving you privacy. Right? They say that's what covering your feet is. Well, here's the thing. The Bible talks all through the Bible about making breeches, making pants, making things that cover this leg and that leg. Look at Ehud. He had a knife hidden literally in his pants. It didn't say he's hidden it in a robe and covered it up. I mean, here's the point I'm trying to make is men weren't running around in skirts and robes all the time. Like, that doesn't make any sense. You mean to tell me that Saul went into this cave, like he just had a big old dress on, squatted down, and then just got up and walked off? Covering your feet means literally taking your pants down. That's what it means when you cover your feet. And people try to say, what this comes from is during the Dark Ages, you had the Catholic Church painting pictures of people, right? And they paint Jesus with long hair and all the Pharisees and stuff with long hair and wearing robes and dresses all the time. But literally this comes from their point of view, like how they were dressing during that time. And they're probably a bunch of homos and queers, to be honest with you. Because they were the Catholic Church, they hated the Lord, they were against God, they were against the Bible. They didn't want anybody to have the Bible but the priest, right? And that's a whole other sermon for a whole other time. But the fact of the matter is this is not what people looked like back in the Bible day. They wasn't walking around with long hair and dresses all the time. I heard this preacher say one time this. He said, Middle Eastern Jewish men just didn't run. He was talking about, do you guys remember the story of the prodigal son? So the prodigal son, he goes out into the world and he spends all his goods, right? Well, when he has spent everything, he wants to return home to his father. Well, when he does, the Bible talks about the father running down the road and greeting him, right? And saying, just so happy that his son returned home. And this pastor is like, oh, Middle Eastern Jewish men, they just didn't run. The custom was that you just didn't run during that time. Well, here, the Bible talks about running all the time in the Bible. There's so many people talking about running this, running here, running there. The Bible puts a lot of emphasis on running. We could probably have a whole sermon talking about running. Literally, that's probably something I should. I think the Bible emphasizes you running and being in shape and doing activity. But this guy's trying to say, well, Middle Eastern Jewish men just didn't run. And he's trying to act like this dude literally hiked up his skirt and ran down like he had a dress on or something, running down the road to greet his son. But the thing about it is men didn't run around in dresses. They wore pants, right? The Bible, we talk about pants all throughout the Bible. The priests making pants to wear, men making pants to wear. Saul had pants on. And that's going to be coming. I know it doesn't seem like it has a spiritual application, but the point I'm trying to make is when you hear somebody saying this, like, oh, the Jewish custom was this or the Jewish custom was that. Well, if it ain't 90% of the time, it's not true. It's Jewish lies and Jewish fables is what it is, and it's usually used to prove some point, to make something seem off or obscure. Like the fact of the matter is Jewish people didn't run around in dresses with long hair. They had pants on. They were men. They were warriors. And think about that. If you were a fighter, if you were a warrior in David's army, you think it'd be comfortable running around in a dress trying to fight? Literally, it's just a big long robe, and you're trying to fight people and fight with a sword. That would be just the most uncomfortable thing ever. You mean to tell me that they could make swords, but they didn't know how to make pants? That's what they try to say. They say, well, they hadn't figured out pants yet. Of course they figured out pants. They probably didn't have zippers. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, these people are smart. They're making swords. This guy made a dagger. He made an entire dagger, but he couldn't make a pair of pants. It's literally just absurd. But there is a point to that. Let's go back to 1 Samuel 24, and I'll point out the point of that. There's not really a spiritual application there, but the point is when people start saying these things like, oh, Jewish custom this and Jewish custom that, most of the time it's not true. If it ain't in the Bible, I don't believe it. And the Bible talks about pants, men wearing pants. Literally covering your feet just is a whole sign showing that Saul had pants on, Eglon had pants on. You know what I mean? Men wore pants. It wasn't running around in dresses and togas and long hair and looked like a bunch of feminine sisters. They were men. So back to 1 Samuel 24. We saw, so Saul goes into the cave and he covers his feet. And we know what covering your feet means, right? Yes. So he goes into the cave. He's in private. He thinks he's in private, covering his feet. And the men of David said unto him, Behold, the day of which the Lord said unto thee, Behold, I will deliver thine enemy into thine hand, that thou mayest do to him as it shall seem good unto thee. Then David arose and cut off the skirt of Saul's robe privily. So, here's what this is saying. David did not. So, if we're to believe what they tell us, that Saul had this big, huge dress on, and he skirted down like this, and he's relieving himself, that David literally got all the way up on him while he's relieving himself, and cut off a piece of his robe while he was doing his business. That did not happen. I mean, Saul would feel that. That doesn't even make sense. Here's what happened. Saul had a big old robe on and he took it off. I mean, imagine if I'm going to, I know we're getting kind of crude here, but this is what the Bible talks about. If you're going to use the bathroom and you have a big old coat on, you take the thing off so you don't get it dirty. You hang it up over here. Then you go cover your feet and do your business. David literally grabbed his coat while it was hanging up and cut the bottom of his coat off. That's what David did. He didn't cut off the bottom of his robe while he's literally taking a dump. That's kind of gross, right? So look at this. But here's what happens. Saul goes into the cave. He relieves himself. He takes his coat off. David sees his coat there, and David has a chance to kill Saul. Here's the point to the story, okay? David has a chance that he could kill Saul right there. David and his men are hiding in the cave, and Saul has no idea they're there. He's in there for privacy, relieving himself. And has no idea there are 600 guys surrounding him in this cave. David goes up, grabs his coat, and cuts the bottom of it off. But he could have killed him right then and there. Because Saul's trying to kill David. David could have ended it right there. This is what his friend is telling him. He's saying, look, the Lord has delivered him into your hand. Do with him what you will. Here's the Lord's deliverance for you. Look what but we'll see what he says here in just a second. Verse 6. And he said unto his men, this is David, the Lord forbid that I should do this thing unto my master, the Lord's anointed, to stretch forth mine hand against him, seeing he is the anointed of the Lord. So David stayed his servants with these words, and suffered them not to rise against Saul. But Saul rose up out of the cave, and went on his way. And David arose afterward, and went out of the cave, and cried after Saul, saying, My Lord the king. And when Saul looked behind him, David stooped with his face to the earth, and bowed himself. David still showing him reverence and respect, even though Saul is trying to kill him. But Saul is also his king, so he's kind of in a predicament. Look what it says. And David said to Saul, Wherefore hearest thou men's words, saying, Behold, David seeketh thy hurt? Behold, this day thine eyes have seen how that the Lord hath delivered thee today into mine hand in the cave. And some bade me kill thee. People were trying to tell me to kill you. But mine eye spared thee. And I said, I will not put forth mine hand against the Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. You know, David wrote a psalm, and it's Psalm 105. And in this psalm, we're not going to read the whole entire psalm. But Psalm 105:15 says, saying, touch not mine anointed, and do my prophets no harm. You know, but David was right about this. And we talked about this before, and we'll look at this again. But people that God has put in your life to be your overseer, to be your pastor, to be your teachers, to be your parents, right? God has put these people in your life for a reason. And just because you think that they're doing wrong, right? We have to understand that we still have to give them honor and respect. Like, for instance, your parents say you can't go to a movie or whatever. And you think, well, that's just so wrong. You're just so mean on me and down on me, and I can't believe you would do that. You're oppressing your son, and you're back. You know, maybe you think that whatever it is, or maybe let's think of something even worse. I don't know. Maybe you think your parents are actually telling you something that's wrong. I'm not saying to go do something that your parents are telling you it's wrong to do, but what I am saying is you have to give your parents honor and respect. And the Bible teaches this very well. Even though you think your rulers aren't worthy of it, you still have to give them the honor and respect because the Lord says so. We've talked about this before, but look at Romans chapter 12. This is the last place I'll have you turn. Romans chapter 12. Because I want to show you this idea of giving people honor and respect even when you don't think that they deserve it. Because the bottom line is this: God has put people in your life, just like pastors, preachers, teachers, parents, right? And we need to give them the honor and respect regardless of whether they deserve it or not. We'll look at this concept in Romans. This is a concept all throughout the Bible, but it's better laid out in the New Testament. Which David understood this concept very well. He wrote many Psalms about this concept. And he lived this concept in his very life. He had a guy literally trying to kill him, but he showed him honor and respect the entire time. Romans chapter 12 and verse 14. And we're going to read through chapter 12 all the way into 13, verse 7, okay? So starting in chapter 12, verse 14. Bless them which persecute you. Bless and curse not. Rejoice with them that do rejoice, and weep with them that do weep. Be of the same mind one toward another. Mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. Be not wise in your own conceit. Recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in so doing thou shalt heap coals of fire upon his head. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. So what's he saying? Right? Do what is right, regardless of what is being done unto you. And we're going to see why here in just a second. Let's keep reading. Let every soul, we're in chapter 13, but this is a continuation of the same thought. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers. For there is no power but of God. The powers that are ordained of God. So let every soul be subject unto the higher power. What's the higher power God telling you? He's telling you to be subject unto those in authority over you, right? He's telling you no matter what, no matter if you think they're worthy of honor, if you think they're worthy of respect, that's not your concern. I'll worry about that. You just show them the honor and the respect that I am telling you to show them, right? Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God. They that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid. For he beareth not the sword in vain, for he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. So look, he's saying this. He's saying if you have a ruler, that's the perfect example, Saul and David. Right? Saul is David's ruler and David's king, and David is supposed to show him honor no matter what. But Saul is trying to kill David, and he's trying to kill David wrongfully. But if David keeps showing him respect and honor and glory and not killing him and not retaliating and just running and getting away from the fight and not trying to retaliate, Saul still has no reason to kill David, does it? Even though Saul continues to chase him, he has no reason to do so. David has never once given him a reason. But let's say David does retaliate at some point. And David does try to fight back. Now Saul does have a reason to retaliate, don't he? Or Saul can say, well, look, David retaliated. David tried to hit me. David tried to stab me. David did this or that. Now I have a reason to kill him. But if he stays away and he doesn't do anything and he keeps doing what is right, Saul will still have no reason and David will remain in the right. But what this is also saying is this. It's saying God is telling you to honor Saul the king, and even though Saul the king you think he's doing wrong, and in some cases maybe they are even doing wrong. So if Saul the king is doing wrong and doing you wrong, you still have to give him honor and respect, but if you don't, if you retaliate, if you try to take your own vengeance on him, now God has a problem with you. You just created a problem with a higher power, right? God, who is telling you not to retaliate, not to try to get revenge, not to do any of that sort, God is saying, I will be the revenger. I will do what is right. I will take care of this situation. You just sit back and be quiet and let me work, right? Because, for one thing, God's vengeance will be greater than your vengeance anyways. But for two, by you disobeying and trying to kill Saul yourself, now you have not only created Saul's wrath to turn on you, even though Saul's wrath was already on you, now he has a reason for his wrath to be on you. And on top of that, now God has a reason for his wrath to be on you because you disobeyed God. Does everybody understand that concept? That even though your rulers are above you and you may think they're doing wrong, or maybe they actually are doing wrong, you still honor and glorify the people God has put in your life and God has put over you, and let God deal with the consequences of what they are doing wrong. Does that make sense? So let's just say, for instance, and this is not true by any means. Let's say, for instance, that I thought Pastor Brant was wrong somewhere. He was doing something wrong, right? And I just don't like him. I can't believe he made that decision. That's just such a stupid decision, blah, 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 right? I'm supposed to honor and respect him. Let's just say I think his decision is against the Bible. This is not true. This is just clearly a story. I did not think this at all. Let's just pretend that I thought he made some decision that was against the Bible, and I'm like, man, that's just so stupid. I can't believe that. Well, it's not my job to correct him. It's not my job to be mad at him over it. And it's not my job to go to him and be like, you're against the Bible. You need to do this, 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 and this because God says so, blah, blah, blah. That's not my job. My job is to show honor and respect and glorify the pastor that God has put over me because he's over me. I'm not over him. I'm not to be going up to him and telling him and rebuking him. The Bible says to treat an elder like a father. Now, if I thought he was doing something wrong, maybe we would have a nice little talk about it, but I'm not going to go up and rebuke an elder. I'm not going to go up to the pastor and start telling him what I think and how I feel. No, I'm going to let him do what he is supposed to do because God is over him, right? And I don't think he's doing wrong by any means. This is just clear. Again, this is just a story. But if I did think that he was doing something wrong, I would keep my mouth shut because God is his boss. And if I go to retaliate against him, if I go to rebuke him, now not only is God going to be mad at him for the decision he's doing wrong, if he was, but now he's going to be mad at me for rebuking an elder. When I should have just stayed out of it and given the pastor or the guy over me the honor and the glory and the respect that God tells me I should give him. Maybe he doesn't deserve it, but God says regardless if they deserve it or not, you give them that honor and that glory because I said so. Does everybody understand this concept? It's a pretty clear concept in the Bible. You don't have to turn here, but let me finish this and then I'll read 1 Peter when we're done. I'm going to finish what we were reading now. 13 verse 4. For he is a minister of God to thee for good, but if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is a minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Wherefore ye must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. For this cause pay ye tribute also, for they are God's ministers, attending continually upon this very thing. Render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom his tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, and honor to whom honor. If you owe taxes, pay your taxes. If you owe this customary greeting to this person, give it to them, right? If they want you to come in and, this wasn't never my rule, but this was Samuel's rule, and you guys still follow it to this day. If Samuel wants you to come in here, and the boy sat on this side, and the girl sat on this side, is give him what he wants, right? You show honor to whom honor is due, glory to whom glory is due, right? You give the people what they want, you give your rulers what they want, and you behave like normal adults, right? There's no need to start rebuking elders and, well, I think that's wrong. They shouldn't have to separate or blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's not necessarily my rule, but I'm glad you guys still follow it because you're honoring what Samuel told you to do. But the bottom line is this. Whether you think somebody deserves the honor or the glory or the respect that is a leader in your life or not, you still have to give it to them because God said so, even if you don't think that they deserve it, right? You don't have to turn here. I'm going to read for you 1 Peter 2 because this is a good passage on this subject as well. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 17 says this. You can just listen. Honor all men. Love the brotherhood. Fear God. Honor the king. Servants, be subject to your masters with all fear, Not only to the good and gentle, but also to the froward, right? He said, not only to the good and gentle masters, but also to the ones that you think aren't doing right. Give them honor, respect, and glory. For this is thankworthy. If a man for conscience toward God endure grief, suffer wrongfully. What's he saying? He's saying, if you're doing this, you're doing it for God, obviously. You're not doing it for that guy who you think is doing wrong. You're doing it for God. And this is thankworthy to God because, look, look what it says. Verse 20. For what glory is it if, when ye be buffeted for your faults, ye shall take it patiently. But if when ye do well and suffer for it, ye take it patiently, this is acceptable with God. He's saying there's a lot more glory in somebody, right? Just like David. If David was taking all this beating and this abuse, but he had done wrong towards Saul, that's not really him being kind and being patient and honoring, giving honor to whom honor is due. Does that make sense? Because if he had done something wrong and deserved the punishment he was getting, right, then that makes perfect sense. However, if he had done no wrong and he's still getting this punishment and he's enduring it for the Lord's saying you're going to get honor, you're going to get glory out of that because you're doing something for me. You don't deserve the punishment you're getting, but you're taking it on my behalf. So I am going to reward you for this effort. For even here, look at verse 21. For even hereunto were ye called, I'm reading it for you. Because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example that ye should follow in his steps. Because Christ didn't deserve what he suffered either, did he? Not one bit. He didn't deserve anything that he suffered, but he took it anyways, despising the shame for other people. And that's what we need to do. We need to do it for either for other people or for God, mainly. Because God is the one telling us to give honor to whom honor is due, even though maybe they don't deserve it. Who did no, in the verse 22, this is still talking about Christ, who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth. He had no reason to suffer what he suffered, but he still suffered it anyways. Who, when he was reviled not again. When he suffered, he threatened not, but committed himself to him that judgeth righteously. Right? He's being judged by people for something he didn't do. He got beaten, humiliated, captured, tortured for something that he didn't do, and he took it. And he took it because God told him to take it. Remember we had that lesson on Wednesday nights about the relationship between the Father and the Son and how Jesus does everything that the Father tells him to do? Well, Jesus did this because the Father was saying, hey, you take this upon yourself and you do this without guile, without backbiting, without disputing. And Jesus said, well, yeah, absolutely. I'm doing everything the Father wants me to do. Who his own self bare our sins in his own body on the tree, that we, being dead to sin, should live unto righteousness, by whose stripes ye were healed. For ye were sheep going astray, but now are returned to the shepherd and the bishop of your souls. So because you are saved, born again, Bible-believing Christians, and because God, the Heavenly Father, is your Father, you need to show people in your life honor and glory and respect because God demands it. Not because the people deserve it. Because a lot of times people will let you down. People are sinners. People let you down all the time, but you don't do it because you want to give them the honor and glory. You give them the honor and glory because God demands it from you. And then there's another passage in the Bible that says this. It says, let them that rule well be counted worthy of double honor. Right? And that's what it's saying is they deserve your honor and your respect because God demands it. But if they do well, if they're ruling well and they're doing what is right and holy, then they're counted worthy of double honor because God commands you to honor them, but because they also deserve it now. Right? Does that make sense? So we need to honor and glory and respect our elders and our people over us, even when we don't think that they deserve it. And David is the perfect example of this. Saul doesn't deserve it at all. Saul has been a wild man. He's been trying to kill him. He's been making all these crazy proclamations and doing all these weird things. We saw that we had one sermon. We talked about all the weird things that he said, right? Remember all the weird stuff he was doing? He's been weird. He's been deceitful. He can't make up his mind. But David still gives him all the honor and glory and respect that he deserves. And I'm not going to finish the chapter anymore. We're going to end with that. The bell should have rung, actually. So, I don't know if it's going to ring here soon or what. But we can pick up with that